Hey, it's JR. That's Chris. We are here once again. It's not Thursday. Normally we're coming to you on Thursday with some updates, but it is Friday, and Chris and I made our video yesterday morning, Thursday. Well, we made it Wednesday night and we released it on Thursday morning, and there was some new stuff that came out because essentially what is happening right now is it's just been a complete reset. Like we said in the last video, it's been a complete reset on this head coaching hire. It feels like it's less about honing in on a certain target right now, and it's more of kind of like a speed dating type of thing where you're just talking to as many people as possible. So there is some news regarding Pat Kraft a little bit. There's some news regarding some of the people we talked about in the last video, maybe a couple new ones that we're going to talk about here. But let's go ahead and start with the Pat Kraft stuff, Chris. So you've figured out that Pat Kraft might not be as involved in this now as he was before. What have you been hearing on Pat Kraft and his involvement in the head coach hiring?
Well, he's still very much involved, but what happened was, excuse me, after he botched this Sataki deal and he let him walk out the door without signing him, the and I think I mentioned this last night, but I didn't know the full extent. The big boosters, and I'm talking big money people, were extremely pissed off, supposedly flooded him, trashing his email, like just flooded his emails, his phone calls, and they were really pissed. And the school president got involved. I mean, she always was involved. That would, a hire this big. But basically, what happened as a result of that was Kraft. Originally, this was solely Pat Kraft's decision. No search committee, none of that. The final decision was Pat Kraft's. Now it's no longer his sole decision. He's still very much a part of it and has a big say, obviously, but it's no longer his decision. The school president, I think, will have the final say, but it's the school president. It's Pat Kraft, and I'm sure probably some big money people and a few other people. I don't know names. Well, might know some names, but I'm not at liberty to say. But some big money people and whoever else is involved with it. So that was the move they made after Pat Kraft botched this. They were really upset, and that is where we're at with Pat Kraft in a nutshell. People and they want to. I do think they want to expedite this timeline. I'm not 100% sure, but from what I've gathered, they're looking to speed this up and get something done here rather quick. So that's where we're at as far as Pat Kraft.
Now I
So you want me to
know.
drop the bomb?
Well, let's talk about Terry Smith really fast, and then we'll get to the
All right.
bomb here in a minute. We'll leave the people waiting a little bit. So,
All right.
um, so Terry Smith came up instantly. Once people started figuring out that Pat Kraft might not be as involved as he once was. There were rumors circulating around out there that Pat Kraft isn't doing anything in it anymore, and Terry Smith can finally get the job because Pat Kraft was blocking him out and everything. Then we got a report today from On3 that Terry Smith is being considered for the UConn and the Memphis job, and this isn't paid for or anything, so I don't feel bad sharing it on here. Actually, I'm helping out On3 here. If you want to go read the article, go on over to On3 and read the article there. So, but does this signal to you that it's pretty much for sure that Terry Smith is not going to be at Penn State? Number one, as the head coach, and number two, obviously, if he gets a head coaching job, he wouldn't come back to Penn State. But do you see a avenue for Terry Smith to still be at Penn State, maybe support staff, assistant coach, something like that?
Well, that's the plan, and they hope whatever happens with Terry that he still is part of Penn State in some capacity. I just found out, just like you, about the UConn offer and the Memphis offer, and it's like the funny thing is, if he was an interim coach for these 6 games, they probably don't even know who the guy was. I mean, obviously we know of him, but he wouldn't get these offers. But I don't think Terry Smith is out of this race. Now, with the bomb we're going to drop here in a little bit, he might be out of this race if what I'm going to say goes through. But I do think Terry Smith is very still much in it per se as of right now, because a lot of these big boosters that were really pissed with Kraft were also very much campaigning for Terry Smith. So I do think Terry Smith is very much in it still as we speak. I have no idea his interest on the Memphis or UConn job. I mean, this is fresh, new, just came up. But I do know that it is absolutely in Penn State's best interest, and I'm sure they will do everything they can to retain Terry to some in whatever capacity they can. Whether that happens or not will remain to be seen. But that's pretty much where we're at.
All right. Well, very good. Go ahead. You got your bomb. You want to drop it? Let the people know.
All right. So tonight, now remember, I'm not getting excited over anything anymore with this coach search. Nothing is done until the ink dries. Nothing's finalized. Tonight, it has been reported, and from what I've gathered from some people, Pat Kraft and the school president, Neeli, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, are in Ames, Iowa as we speak. Maybe not as we speak, but they were in Iowa tonight, speaking with Matt Campbell, trying to finalize a deal and put a deal together for him. It is looking really promising that Matt Campbell might be the next Penn State head coach. Again, I can't get excited anymore. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Nothing's finalized till the ink is dry, but there's a ton of buzz and a lot of smoke. You know, they're not flying out there for nothing if there's not some very strong interest on his part. They are out there, and do not be surprised if you hear Matt Campbell is the next head coach of Penn State football rather soon. I would think if you don't hear something rather soon, that they'll probably move on for him. This is really looking good for Matt Campbell right now, though I will say that. Something I forgot to mention as well, Brian Dabble is out of it. I know just last night I reported, watch out for Brian Dabble. He is now officially out of it. From the read I get and from what I've gathered, once Pat Kraft botched this up, I believe nobody really liked Dabble at Penn State. It's like nobody interviewed, sitting in an interview. They just didn't think he was a good fit, connection, all that. But I do believe, because it was told to me that Brian Dabble is the guy that Pat Kraft is going to hire, look for something to come soon. But I think as a result of what happened with other people stepping in, like the school president, and not being high on Dabble, I think that kind of neutered Pat Kraft a little bit. Brian Dabble was out of it. They're now down to Matt Campbell, same as Matt Campbell, Tommy Reese, Matt Patricia, and then there's Terry. Jeff Hafley's a long shot. I don't think he's pretty much in it anymore. They're the four names they're focusing on, and very good chance we get Matt Campbell. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll bring up Matt Patricia just for a moment. I heard today, probably about midday, that Penn State had contacted Matt Patricia and that he is intrigued by the idea, but it kind of caught him off guard a little bit. When Chip Kelly came to Ohio State, he was fully prepared to try and get an offensive coordinator job in the NFL and try to get back there. Not exactly the same with Matt Patricia. He was kind of more willing to stay at Ohio State for a little while because he did like Ryan Day a lot and really liked the program. And not to say that Chip Kelly did not. Chip Kelly just, didn't necessarily want to stick in college football for a long period of time. That might change now because he's no longer in the NFL after being fired from the Raiders. But we'll obviously see if Chip Kelly makes a reunion with Ohio State at some point down the line. But back to Matt Patricia. Sounds like with how caught off guard he was and everything else with the Indiana game coming up and everything, Matt Patricia's not the kind of guy that wanted to search out anything like this especially during the season. So
Right.
Matt Patricia is not necessarily doesn't want the job. It's not necessarily that he does want the job. He's just kind of caught off guard, intrigued, and right now it doesn't sound like the timeline of Penn State and the timeline of Matt Patricia are lining up. If they lined up better, maybe, Matt
Yeah.
Patricia, wants the shot at being a head coach again someday, NFL or college, I assume. Because he just seems like that kind of guy that would
Right.
want to, be in charge of a program again. But does sound like the timing is kind of the hardest thing. So it's good to
Yeah.
hear that Matt Campbell. I mean, honestly, it's good to hear Matt Campbell might be the right guy for the job because I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But I think if you would have told me from the beginning that Penn State hires Matt Campbell, I would have said he probably would have been one of the top 3 best options. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah. What? No, I agree. I love him as a coach. It's just I'm just really hope they close because Matt Campbell. Going back to past 6-7 years or so, every year with coaching openings, he's the name that comes up. But yet he just never leaves. He always stays. So that's why I'm just hesitant to get excited about it. I saw things where he, in the past he didn't want to uproot his family and he had young kids. They're a little older now. And, there's definitely a lot of smoke to this, but he was close to leaving other years, I presume. And every time it just died out. Now, the beginning of this search, when Matt Campbell's name came up, there wasn't a lot to be said about it. I don't know if they reached out. I mean, Pat Kraft, he really cast a wide net. You keep hearing this huge, big wide net he cast. I'm sure there might have been some communication along the lines of early on of, hey, just gauging some interest, Penn State job open. You want to consider it, maybe something along those lines. But that was it. And it never went any further than that. From there, it was always focusing on other candidates that would, like Mike Elko and then Brent Key and Eli Drinkowitz that would come in and drop off. And I just think now they, with this new other people in charge of this, that they're circling the wagons back and really pushing for Matt Campbell pretty hard. I'd love him as a coach. Classic example of a guy who's done more with less. I was kind of thinking he kind of reminds me of the younger version of maybe a Pat Fitzgerald was at Northwestern, doing more with less, so to speak, in a way. Very smart football mind, smart offensive mind. I hope this happens. I really hope this happens. If this doesn't happen, I would just hire Terry Smith already. Matt, give me one or the other. A guy like Matt Patricia, to me, it's similar to Dabble. They're good coaches. I do think X's and O's, NFL background. They're good coaches, but they're not going to be at Penn State long. They're just using college, in my opinion, as a springboard to get back to the NFL. Patricia's been a career NFL guy. Dabble's been a career NFL guy. They're eventually just going to get back to the NFL. So if Matt Campbell is not the option, I would just hire Terry. If they can't close on him, I would hire Terry Smith. Will they do that? I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of days. Though I think I said it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of days, probably 3-4 times now, and over the past few weeks, and things just keep falling off. And Iowa State is going to do whatever they could to retain him. They're going to make him a counteroffer. He just signed an extension. So here's the numbers. Campbell right now making $5 million a year at Iowa State. What I heard, what I seen reported, Penn State's offering $11 million. So it's more than double what he's making at Iowa State. His buyout, if it's even considered a buyout, I'm not sure. But for Penn State to hire him, it would only cost $2 million. Penn State would only owe $2 million, I guess, to Iowa State or however it worked with the contracts to hire him. So that's not bad at all. That's nothing. The guy could double his salary, come with all the resources. And, it's just funny. Why wouldn't you, as a young head coach, want to aggressively move up the ladder? I get being comfortable in his spot, but don't you want to be like a Brian Hartline and be aggressive and be a go-getter and go out there? He hasn't done it, and he had so many opportunities. Hopefully this is the time he breaks on that. And I'd love him as a Penn State head coach. I think he'd be a great fit. He's from Ohio originally. I mean, from what I've gathered, he's a small town type of guy, likes, prefers a small town over a city atmosphere. Exactly fits State College. So really hoping they get this deal done. We'll see what happens. Some of the things I want to say about Pat Kraft, though, is, there's a whole business side to this. People are saying fire Pat Kraft, fire. Yeah, he botched the search and people are pissed off. I get it. I'm one of them. But, he's done a great job financially. He brought this huge Adidas deal to Penn State, saved them a ton of money with the Adidas deal. He got the stadium renovation going. What else did he do? He was able to very much mitigate James Franklin's buyout and negotiate that down to only $9 million, and that was in the $50 million range at the time. So he's done a lot of good financially at Penn State. Does that excuse him from botching this search up a little bit? No. Are people still pissed? Yes. But, just keep in mind there's a whole business aspect of it. Also today, it basically came out that Kalen DeBoer made a statement that he's not interested in any other coaching jobs, just for what it's worth.
Funny how that statement comes out right after they finish the season and he's going to the playoffs, kind of like we referenced on here, huh, Chris?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yep. Well, I'll say one last thing, and then we'll move on. We'll get out of here. I'll just say, you know what? If Pat Kraft is not the head coach hiring type, I got an idea. Just go ahead, hire the head coach, keep him around for a long time, and Pat Kraft can keep doing the financial stuff. And honestly, you got a great situation there. If your athletic director can do things well financially and doesn't have to hire a coach, I think things are going to be pretty good in State College if that happens.
And I heard that, like, as far as the GM goes, like I said, I'm sure they'll hire a GM, but I have heard that Pat Kraft would serve at kind of a role of the GM for however long, and I'd be fine with that, because the one thing I know about him, he is going to be aggressive. He's going to be very aggressive with NIL, very aggressive in the portal. They don't have good NIL at Iowa State. Everybody knows that. Resources, not great. Come on down, Matt. We got, we're waiting for you, buddy. Come on. We need you. End our misery.
Is Rocco Beck, is he a senior?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't checked. I'm not sure. But what was interesting? I saw a stat. I wish I could pull it up somewhere. Matt Campbell he has actually a slightly better winning percentage than James Franklin versus top teams. Versus ranked opponents. He does slightly better versus top, I don't know, it was the top 25. I saw something along those lines. I forget the exact stat, but it was basically, wins versus top opponents. He actually had one more win versus top opponents other than James Franklin. So the whole theory, he's doing this with Iowa State and he's making them into what he, with such, little talent. Imagine what he'll do at a place like Penn State. Let's get this done.
Could not agree more. Yeah, Rocco Beck is a redshirt junior. So, I mean, I assume he is off to the NFL. I am not super caught up in my, Iowa State roster and everything like that. But, if he could bring somebody like Rocco Beck with him, some other guys, that would obviously help out this roster a whole lot as since they're not going to hire, if they don't hire Terry Smith, they're probably going to lose a good amount of guys in this roster, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, yes, that is the main concern, is if Terry Smith is not around, I do fear losing a good number of guys. Now, whatever the new coach is, hopefully it is who we said it was going to be, Campbell. Hopefully players will warm up to him pretty quickly, realize they got a great opportunity with him, stick around, and it's still Penn State, and we'll see what happens from there. So, but there's definitely going to be some attrition to some degree if it's not, if Terry's not around.
What year did Franklin start at Penn State? Was it
2014?
14? Okay, so since 2016, that's when Matt Campbell started at Iowa State. He is 19-19 against ranked opponents.
There you go. That's incredible.
So, it is. Since 2016 at Penn State, I can go back to 2014 here in a minute. Penn State is 20-22 against ranked opponents.
Yeah,
They should have better roster anyway, so you should be better against ranked opponents, considering you probably are ranked.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah, and that the stat that's incredible. I mean, that
Yeah.
says a lot. It says a lot on how poorly of a coach James Franklin was when he played similar talented teams, and it says a lot of how great of a coach Matt Campbell has been to rise above with not very little talent, but not talent on the level of the top 25 by any means.
Yeah, you go back to 2014, and it looks like Franklin was 1-4 against ranked teams in 2014 and 2015. So,
It's
but that
horrible.
was also when he was, didn't have much of an offensive line and was still trying to get the roster completely together and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I
um,
don't count 14 and 15. You got to give Franklin a mulligan. I've never
mhm.
seen. I mean, they're still recovering from the sanctions. I mean that the one that was first year or second year, but I've never. They literally had to bring D tackles over to play offensive line. It was that just to like field a too deep like offensive line. It was. I've never seen anything so bad in my life. But 2016 is what I and most Penn State fans that aren't Franklin fluffers and Franklin apologists, 2016 is what most people consider out of the sanctions. Like to fairly judge Franklin at Penn State 2016 and on is where you'd start.
And I'm looking up Rocco Beck right now in the NFL draft, and it looks like he is not receiving any hype at all for the NFL draft. So, redshirt junior from Iowa State. I'm not trying to get people's hopes up here because, like you said, Chris, we have said before,
Crazy, man.
we hope this happens.
Crazy.
But if it does happen, you know, we'll see. And maybe Chris and I will try to come on for a recap and try to go through who the Penn State head coach hire is and all that stuff. So, Chris, is there anything you'd like to end with here before we get off?
Just come on down, Maddie. We're waiting for you. Let's go, Matt. We need
Make it
you
happen.
already.
Patty and Maddie. There we go.
There you go. Hey, the only thing I'll say isn't it incredible? All these other schools, right? They have, you have Florida. They in a huge battle wanting Lane Kiffin. They don't get Lane Kiffin. Just a few days later, boom, John Summerall. No questions asked. No counter offers by Tulane. I'm sure it was a counter offer. Boom, they got John Summerall. Summerall was supposed to go to Auburn. Auburn doesn't get Summerall. What do? Boom, they hire Alex Golesh. Let's not overcomplicate this. Get it done. Get it done.
There, you heard it here first. Get it done. We will see if Pat Kraft and Neeli can get it done for Penn State. If they do, congrats to Penn State. If not, you'll hear from us again next Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good one. See you later, guys.